That sounds fun. That sounds fun. Check 1, 2 on the microphone. NEF down, then your car to your home. Every week it's something new. A deep talk or an interview. She'll make you laugh, she'll make you cry. When it's dark out, she's a light. When you're down, get you feeling right. Oh man, that sounds fun.
Hi, friends, and welcome back to another episode of That Sounds Fun, our 10th anniversary year. I'm your host, Annie F. Downs. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Before we dive into today's conversation, I want to tell you about one of our incredible sponsors, Athletic Greens. Taking care of our health is not always easy, I hear you, but there is one simple way to make sure we're getting the nutrients we need in a day. It's why I've been drinking AG1. It's just 1 scoop mixed in water once a day, every day. It makes me feel so much more energized and ready for the day. It's because each serving of AG1 has my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more. It's a powerful, healthy habit, but it's also really easy. If I'm running short on time in the morning or when I'm traveling like I am now, I just grab a travel pack. Each one is an individual serving of AG1 that's easy to mix on the go, so I make sure I still get my daily nutrients. If there's one product I had to recommend to elevate your health, it is AG1, and that's why I've partnered with them for so long. We're so grateful for that. If you want to take ownership of your health, start with AG1 as well. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/soundsfun. That's drinkag1.com/soundsfun. Y'all check it out. Today on the show, I get to talk with my friend and one of our worldwide favorites, John Mark Comer. You know him and love him, and today is his 6th time being on That Sounds Fun. That's right, member of the Hall of Fun, any guest who's been with us more than 5 times. He's taught us so much about rest and Sabbath, and his new book, Practicing the Way, he's doing a deep dive on some spiritual practices that will help you and Jesus connect in consistent and deeper ways. This is another incredible conversation to help us really kick off this year. Remember, we're letting ourselves have the whole month of January to kind of plan and prepare and move into 2024. And this conversation, I think, is another step in that for us. So here's our friend and Hall of Funner, John Mark Comer.
That sounds fun.
Okay, John Mark Comer, welcome back to That Sounds Fun.
Annie, what a delight to see you. You fill my heart with joy.
What a treat.
Great to see you.
I feel the same way. Listen, I have a big announcement for you that you don't even know.
Okay, hit me.
Listen, I got to show you this. We are on video. You, my friend, are part of the Hall of Fun.
What?
John Mark Comer.
Okay, so start
right
from the beginning.
here.
I am basically off social media. I work from home. I have no chance to ever listen to podcasts. I'm out of the loop on all of my friends, all of them. I have no idea. I don't know if you...
Here it is.
You could have had... I have no idea. You could have adopted 9 babies. What is the Hall of Fun?
I did not. I'd have texted you. I just sent you the gift thing on Amazon if I was adopting 9 babies. Okay. That Sounds Fun podcast Hall of Fun is anyone who has been a guest on the show 5 or more times. And today is your 6th episode, my friend.
No way. Okay, who else?
Yes.
Who's in competition for number 7? That's the question.
Right next to you is Santa Claus. Right next to you is Santa Claus.
I have so many questions.
Just so you know. No. Let me tell you who else is on here. Ellie Holcomb. Who else would you know on here? Michael Ware, Dave Barnes, the girls from She Reads Truth. I mean, there's only about 10 of y'all.
Wow.
3 times 4 is 12, 13, 14 people in 800 episodes are in the Hall of Fun.
Can we just stop and just say Hall of Fun? Well done on the branding. A++.
Thank you.
That's clever.
I thought you'd enjoy that. So congratulations. I've been dying to tell you in real life, and I thought, no, I got to just save it for when he is on the pod and
so
say,
for those
welcome to the
watching
Hall of Fun.
on the tube or whatever, can you please replace your That Sounds Fun logo backdrop with the Hall of Fun so that people can see my name on every podcast?
So people can see it.
Thank you.
Yes, we will share it. We will absolutely share it. Okay, John Mark, it is our 10th year of That Sounds Fun. We have a lot of celebrating to do this year.
Congratulations.
And one of the ways we're doing that, thank you, is we are starting every episode asking, tell me what sounds fun to you right now. Tell me what's going on in the Comer home that is fun for y'all right now.
What sounds fun? Vacation sounds fun, Annie Downs.
Yeah, I
It has
believe
been such a
that.
stressful season. We had all of our kids, so we just moved. All of our kids started a new high school, and we bought an old fixer-upper, and I'm starting an organization. And let me just say, you should do one of those things at a time, not four of those things
Yeah,
at a
right,
time.
right.
And so
Right.
when I fantasize right now, it's not about bad things. It's about vacation. Like I just imagine myself on Airbnb. Somebody sent me a link to one like way out in Joshua Tree, like desert, like no neighbors, dirt road, Joshua Tree. And I just can't stop thinking about it. I just want to go.
Oh,
That sounds
listen,
fun.
Airbnb is such a bad drug for me, dude. It is such a bad
It's
drug.
bad. So, on an honest answer, what sounds fun? I'm loving just our Sabbath feast right now. We just moved and we had this incredible Sabbath community in Portland that we begin the Sabbath with like a Sabbath feast together, and it was like transformed our Sabbath practice. It was the highlight of the week.
Yeah.
It was just a weekly party and a really special group of people. And then we moved and did a 10-month kind of family gap year with some lovely people, but basically nobody there kept Sabbath. And so we just did Sabbath by
Yeah.
ourselves for, a better part of a year, which was fine. It was still really beautiful. And now we've kind of moved to put down roots in LA, and we're building community kind of from scratch. There's only a few people we're close to,
Yeah.
but they've been coming for Sabbath dinners, keeping Sabbath, and a couple of them are just hilarious and wonderful to be around. And so that sounds fun. In this crazy season of stress where my life is way outside my kind of normal, more healthy boundaries, just as far as work and activity, it's such a gift to know that Sabbath is coming. And no matter how many hours we're recording this on a Thursday, no matter how many hours I have to work
Yeah.
tonight, how late I have to work or whatever, I know that tomorrow at 6 p.m., all the devices will go off. There'll be no anything, no work, and some really great people I love will be sitting at my table. And I at least have that 24-hour gift. So that sounds fun.
Yeah. How do you not bend to the pressure externally or internally when Saturday comes of like, man, if I could just do 2 hours, if I could just do 2 hours of work, and I could knock out 2 hours, all the kids are reading books, my wife is out doing something with friends. If I could just do 2 hours of work, I would feel so much better. How do you not bend to that?
I don't know if this is a helpful answer, but I feel like, based on my own experience and that of a few older, wiser people that mentor me and I respect and look up to, that if you go on the spiritual journey, not to get too emo here, but there is a kind of,
No, let's do
there
it.
is a bit of an arc where early on in our life, we tend to be, in David Brooks's language, our focus is what he calls the first mountain. We tend, if not all people, but particular people like me or like you, who are a bit more type A, a bit more driven, a bit more entrepreneurial, our focus tends to be work, getting our life together, building a career or a ministry or whatever, doing things in the world, all good things. But underneath it, there is a drivenness, there's an ambition, ego. I don't care how good what you're doing is, planting a church or starting a ministry or writing books about Jesus.
Right.
Our motivations are
Right.
mixed at best. And anybody that says differently is either
Right.
delusional or highly deceptive, either are bad
Yeah,
routes.
unself-aware
Yes.
on their best day.
I mean, at
Yeah.
best, my motivations are mixed. That's the honest truth.
Yeah.
And especially early on. And, there's a gift in that. I think that ambition, which is something the New Testament warns against, God is so gracious. I think he often uses our shadow side, uses our mixed motivation to propel us to do things that if we actually knew how difficult they were going to be, we would never say yes to. So I think ambition works with ministry
Wow.
and work similar to how romance works with marriage. Like M. Scott Peck, does the kind of evolutionary psychology around how intense feelings of desire for another person last on average 6 to 24 months and then go away. And they're often designed by God or nature or, depending on your worldview, to get us to make a commitment to another person in marriage that if we actually knew how difficult marriage was going to be, none of us would ever make that commitment. But those feelings, which often are just, frankly, we romanticize them and we sanitize them, but often they're just burning sexual desire or narcissism, or I like how this person makes me feel, or I'm insecure, and when I'm with this person, I feel less insecure, or I'm anxious, and when I'm with this person, I feel safe. They're less than noble motivations a lot. But God often uses those mixed motivations to get us to make a commitment that then if we stay faithful to that commitment over decades will be one of the most difficult and one of the most transformative relationships we're ever in. And I think work and ministry is the same way. God often uses this mixed motivation of ambition, ego, anxiety, we want to prove our daddy wrong or whatever. And God so graciously meets us in that and uses it to get us to then go do things that often require self-sacrifice, death to self, facing our shadow side, suffering, pain, building resilience. So all that to say, that is that kind of drivenness that not all people have, but a lot of type A people have. I think it is slowly burned clean as you apprentice under Jesus over a lifetime. And I don't think our motivation is ever, I don't know that there's ever a moment where I am pure love and I'm on this podcast just to radiate love to NEF Downs. I would like to think that when I'm 80 and we're on podcast number 71 of the Hall of Fun,
That's right.
I would like to think that my motivation would be much more pure and loving and servant-hearted than it was the first time, when I'm like, ooh, Andy, that's a big podcast. I want to sell books. I want to make it as a writer. Let's go on her podcast. I would like to think there's a transformation in my motivation. Now, this is a very long answer to a very short question. I think what happens is as that motivation begins to be burned clean, purged, purified, set free by Jesus, there's a good thing that happens where we began to do our work more out of love and service. That Khalil Gibran line, work is love made visible. We began to do our work just to express the love of the Trinity to other people. But the sad part of that is, or the difficult part that I'm facing now at this kind of whatever middle point I'm at in my spiritual journey, is I would much rather just read books and pray and make dinner for my family than do anything. I'm like, I feel really free of ambition and really like, but I would love, I would love to just sit in my quiet office and pray for the morning and read and think and then go make dinner for my family and watch the sunset, so I have to get my motivation up, so I don't know. Yeah. Did you ever read the book or come across the paradigm on the critical journey, that stage theory out of Fuller Seminary?
I don't think so. That's not the graphic you have in the book, is it?
Yeah, there is a graphic in the book.
The triangle?
Yes. No, not the triangle. It's a
yeah.
circle graphic on stages of, I don't really go very deep into it in the book. I kind of reference it in the book. But they have this, so stage theory is kind of like the discipleship version of developmental psychology, where they attempt to kind of map various stages we go through in our spiritual development into Christ-like character. And there's these two professors, Janet Hagberg, Robert Gulick. They came up with this 6-part stage theory based on a large data set of thousands of Christians. And there it is. There it is right there. So
page 77, everybody.
Read them to us, Annie.
Okay, stage 1, recognition of God. Stage 2, life of discipleship. Stage 3, productive life. Stage 4, journey inward. Stage 5, journey outward. And stage 6, life of love.
So I love this paradigm. We could talk about this for the whole conversation.
Do it.
But the point I make in the book about it is that they argue most Christians never mature beyond stage 3.
Yes.
So stage 1.
Yes, because there's a wall.
There's a wall. So stage 1, they call recognition of God. That's what evangelicals would call getting saved. Ancient Christians called it awakening. You awake to God and desire to follow him. Stage 2, they call life of discipleship, which is just like you become a basic Christian. You begin going to church, learning the Bible, learning basic spiritual practices, learning how to, obey the commands of Jesus. Stage 3, the productive life, you begin to do things for God. You may lead a small group at your church, or start a podcast, or begin to take your work seriously as a Christian, or volunteer in an area way, or lead a mission trip, or start a justice initiative. You begin to do, not just to learn about Jesus, but to actually do Jesus kind of stuff. And that's where most Christian discipleship ends. It's the end of most American Christian spiritual development. And then you tend to, and this is not this linear, the wall can come at any point in your journey. It can come when you're 4 years old due to a family trauma. It can come much later. It can, come multiple times. But you hit what they call the wall, which is some kind of an experience, like the language in Alcoholics Anonymous is the only way out is through. It's some kind of experience. Yeah. It's divorce, it's the bankruptcy, it's the failure of a business, it's, you get fired. It's some kind of an experience where like there's no getting around it. And you're in a time of pain, suffering, you're in a trial or tribulation in the language of the New Testament, and the only way out is through. And a lot of people never go through. They go backward, they get stuck, they get off the spiritual journey, they deconstruct their faith and go on a different journey. But if you go through, you go into stage 4 that they call the inner journey. This is where like you might begin to do therapy and revisit, and you begin to become aware of your shadow side. You might begin to adopt more contemplative Christian practices, and you begin to come awake to your family of origin, to your woundedness, to the parts of you that are deeply broken and you can't fix through willpower. And then stage 5, they call the outer journey. So now you begin to kind of emerge into the world and do good things. And from the outside, stage 5, this is what I'm getting to, and stage 3 look very similar. You're out doing things for God.
Oh,
You're
they
doing
do,
work,
I bet. Yeah.
But they're very different because you are profoundly different at this stage. Your motivational structure is profoundly liberated of the ego. You're not like pure love yet.
Yeah.
But you are calmer. You're more tranquil. You're more free of outcomes. You're less interested in success. What's the Ronald Rolheiser line? Success has very little to teach us in the second half of life. It still feels good, but it doesn't really do much for our development as people. Whereas early in the journey, success does a lot, because success early on, if we are graced with that, tells us and trains us what we are to give our energies to. But once you kind of know that, and now I know that, it's kind of like now success is not really going to help me. If I had written a book and it did well when I was 24, that would have been a great indicator, like, oh, you should write. Now I'm like, all right, I know I want to write till I die. If this next book does amazing or if it flops, either way, it's not really going to help my development as a person of love,
Right.
So, and then they have a final stage, the life of love, which few people ever reach, but that's just, you just radiate love. Your life is your ministry, not even what you do or what you say, just people being around you. You just like are a medium for a conduit for the love of the Trinity. So lots of things we could say about that. In the book, the point I'm making is that most people's model of discipleship doesn't take them past stage 3. To your conversation in this point, I don't know where I'm at in that journey, but somewhere in that awkward middle where my motivation is slowly but surely being purged and purified. And I'm at this spot where I think maybe I'm in stage 4 and I just want to sit and journal and pray, but I have to get up and go to work in the morning.
Well, what's funny is I kind of, when I look at the diagram and when I think about what you're writing around it, because what you're writing around it is, this is what we thought there'd be a fast version of this, and there is no fast version of life as an actual apprentice of Jesus. And for as much as I love you and love being your friend, one of the hardest things you tell me over and over in your work is this is going to be slow.
Yes.
The whole thing. It's just this is our whole life. But I quote you, I bet I say this quote almost every time I teach, John Mark, where you said, you don't decide when you're 80 who you're going to be when you're 80.
Yeah.
You're deciding right now. And you talk about it again in Practicing the Way. You talk about like, hey, your favorite people, everyone, when you get to know them at 80, they are either very great to be around or very not great to be around because they have been
Yes.
formed their
There's
whole
not
life.
a lot of 80-year-olds that are mid, as my kids would say, you know? I
Yeah.
mean, there are some, but
Yeah,
most
right,
like 25-year-olds aren't like the next Mother Teresa or like a potential terrorist. Most 25-year-olds are just mid. We're just like hopefully decent people.
Yeah.
Most 85-year-olds
Yeah.
lean significantly to one of the two sides.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So when I'm thinking about, I mean, I, as you know, I love Practicing the Way. I love the podcast. I love the work y'all are doing with that organization. This book, though, I told you yesterday, I texted you, I was like, this thing is stout. There is like so much.
What do you mean by stout? You did text me that, and
do.
you put stout in all
There's
caps. I was like, I don't know. Is stout a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I'm not sure.
Yeah, you know what could happen? I'll tell you the truth, and you can tell me if you want me to cut this. What could happen when somebody writes a book around an organization they're creating is it's just the exact same stuff that the people already know, and this is not that. Practicing the Way, the book, I said this to my teammates at lunch today. I was like, there are things in this book that I have not heard, and I've listened to every podcast y'all put out
interesting.
because I'm trying to be an apprentice of
Yes,
Jesus.
I'm pretty
And
sure
so
you are, Annie.
I'm there. Well, thank you. I am. So there are some things that you read in the book that are mentioned as well. I mean, the practices are the
Yes.
practices, but the book is stout because, and here's my question that I'm getting to, is if this is going to be my whole life, if this journey is long with getting through these stages,
Yes.
and if this is a long, slow process, as you said, hold on, I want to read you to yourself. I'm going to read you a quote. If spiritual formation is simply the way of the human spirit or self is formed into a definitive shape, then spiritual formation in the way of Jesus is how each of us is formed to be like Jesus and become our deepest, truest self. And then you literally go on to be like, and it's going to take forever. It's going to take
Let's
forever.
paraphrase people, but yes.
Tell me, yeah, the rest, I didn't read the whole page. That's a paraphrase of the rest of it. If spiritual formation is going to take forever, do we need to define where we are on that circle? Do we need to know where we are in the journey, or do we just keep going?
There are different schools of thought. Some people are very borderline hostile toward the idea of like a stage theory of kind of attempting to map the spiritual journey because there's no one size fits all approach, and the danger with trying to like say, oh, I'm in stage 3 or I'm in stage 2 or I'm in stage 5. The danger is, you know, you fall prey to either pride or despair. You know, oh, look at me, I'm so far ahead, or oh, look at me, I'm so far behind. And pride and despair are both, you know, not helpful at all. I find it helpful because I think we're not the first people to go on the spiritual journey. There are many that have gone before us over the last few thousand years, saints and sages, and who have left behind, you know, words of wisdom, you know, kind of markers for the road and, you know, to look for, and words of warning of what to watch out for. And I think an attempt to kind of plot yourself can be, for certain personality types like my own, very helpful, really just for 2 reasons. You want to better name Jesus' invitations and his warnings to you. So at wherever you're at, whether you're midlife or 21 and you just became a Christian, or you're 85 and nearing the end, you want to be able to say, hey, here at this stage in both life and in spiritual development, which are not the same, but they overlap, these are some of the real dangers. And at this stage, here are some of the invitations of Jesus to me, you know? And and they're very different. Like Ronald Rolheiser has written, I think, more helpfully about this concept than anyone I've know. He would say that the invitations of Jesus are for all people for all time, but they come to us differently at different stages and seasons of our life. You know? So when Jesus says, we read, you know, come deny yourself and follow me. If we're 15 years old and we're not a Christian yet, we hear that and receive that invitation one way. If we're 72 years old and we've been following Jesus for half a century, we hear and receive that same invitation. It means something different. What it means to die to yourself, to surrender yourself, means something different at 72 than at 22. And so I don't know. I find it helpful. Other people don't. You can make too much of
Yeah.
it. You can make too little of it. I think the key is to realize, and what I'm trying to message in this book, that following Jesus is not a religion called Christianity that you ascribe to and you learn more about through lectures and sermons and books. That following Jesus is a lifelong spiritual journey. It's more like apprenticeship to a master craftsperson or artist than it is learning. It's more like learning jujitsu than learning quantum physics. It's something you learn with your body and your life, not just with your brain.
Yeah.
And it is a lifelong journey that you never arrive. You never arrive. And you're
You never arrive.
always in progress. And I mentioned in the book, technology. So you talk about this a lot, Annie, but our generation is living through have you ever had Ben Sass on the podcast?
No, do I need to?
I think he's
Ben
brilliant.
Sass?
I think I don't,
Okay,
I'm
great.
so apolitical. He was a senator for a while. I don't even know what his voting record was. So I have no opinion on his
Yeah, I'll look
political
him up.
life. But I love it when he is talking. He's written a couple great books. And he was a historian, educated at Yale before he went into politics, and now he's back in education. But his basic case is, hey, listen, when 200 years from now, when historians explain our generation, our lifetime, right? They
Yeah.
will not talk about Donald Trump. They will not talk about Antifa. They will not talk about political polarization. They will not talk about everything happening in Congress. They will talk about the shift to a digital world and how it was in all of human history one of the most epochal changes that human beings have ever lived through, and that it caused so much, so like he talks about the last major change being the shift from an agrarian world to an industrial world, which happened, I think, roughly from the 1870s to the 1920s, right? Over about half a century.
Yeah.
And he talks about how the social disruption he talks about prohibition, right? So we look back at prohibition and think
Right.
it's so bizarre that America made all alcohol illegal, right? But then he talks about how there was an 86% approval rating for prohibition. 86% of Americans thought we should we should make all alcohol illegal. I can't fathom that. And he basically says it's because alcohol was such a problem because the social disruption caused by all of these people who basically were rural farmers living in small, extended family village life, deeply relational communal life, moving into Queens and Chicago and these urban environments surrounded by strangers, noise, busyness, was so great that substance abuse was so out of control that 86% of Americans thought we need to make all alcohol legal. And then he basically says that the social disruption we're living through in the shift to social media and the digital age is an even greater disruption. And instead of happening over half a century, it basically happened in half a decade. And
Yeah, I was about to say not even a decade.
you think about mental illness and anxiety, and I'm like, all the craziness. So it's a long way of saying we are living through a technological revolution that 500 years from now, people will still be talking about. And there are gifts of this. I mean, I'm looking at you in real time. You're on the other side of the country. It was not very long ago. It would have been like a 4-month journey for me to come look at your face, and I probably would have died on the journey. The odds of making it were about 50-50. Right? So now it's like, it's amazing. I'm looking at a picture of you from another part of the world, And so there are amazing gifts in technology, and you're listening to a recording of this weeks or months later. But I think technology has had 3 disastrous impacts on our spiritual formation or discipleship. It has unconsciously trained our bodies to expect life to be fast, easy, and controllable. So
Yes,
when
you're
I
right.
want to
Oh
record a
man,
podcast
this
with you,
part of the voice.
fast, no problem. It takes about 30 seconds to text you a link to Riverside and like, let's pop
Yep.
on, let's chat. Easy.
Yep.
Requires nothing. I move my thumb a couple of times and boom, I'm looking at Annie Downs. Controllable. I can start, I can turn off, I can edit it, I can put filters on it to try to make my skin look less whatever. Like, it's so controllable. And spiritual formation is the opposite of those three things. It's not fast, it's slow.
Right.
It's not easy, it's difficult.
Yep.
And it's certainly not controllable. It's radically outside of our
Right.
control. And often it's the things that we can't control and fight against, like suffering, that God uses the most, and failure and disappointment and heartache, that actually is like God's curriculum to shape us to be people of love. So again, I'm not trying to whine about technology. I'm grateful that I can never get lost anymore because of my Maps app, blah, blah, blah. But there are some real shadow sides to it when it comes to formation
Yeah.
that I think we have to actively work.
That sounds fun.
Hey friends, just interrupting this conversation real quick to share about one of our amazing partners, Shopify. Okay, if you're starting a small business this year, or if you make something really cool and have been trying to figure out the best way to sell it, Shopify is the way to go. Whether you're making artwork or earrings, we are here for it, and so is Shopify. We use Shopify to run shop.anniefdowns.com, and it has been so easy and helpful. They're the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, from the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to the did we just make a lot of money stage? No matter what you decide to sell, Shopify helps you sell it everywhere. They have an all-in-one e-commerce platform and an in-person point of sale POS system. So wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers, and they sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, which is your AI-powered all-star. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Sign up for the $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/soundsfun, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/soundsfun now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/soundsfun. Okay, now back to our conversation with John Mark.
That sounds fun.
Do you know there are times, tell me what to do about this. There are times where I feel as guilty about being on my phone as I used to feel when I was in sin patterns I couldn't get out of as a teenager.
Oh, interesting.
Like, it feels like the same kind of like, man, I wish I wasn't doing this. Man, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like, I don't want to spend my time like this. Like, I have those same narratives in my head sometimes about not being able, put that in big quotes, not being able to put my phone down as I did as a teenager when I was struggling with sin patterns I couldn't get out of.
What to tell you what to do about that? Annie, you are a
Well, what do you think?
godly
You don't have to
wife.
have you don't have to have a solution. What do you think about that?
I think you are right. That's a fascinating insight into the inner dynamics of the soul. I think that's a good problem to have, feeling that way about your phone. I think shame is never helpful.
Right. And like I that's practically my roommate sometimes. So yes, 100%.
And I'm just hearing Kurt Thompson in my head. You know, shame is lurking in the shadows behind everything.
Yeah.
So shame, I'm bad, I can't do it. That is certainly not a helpful way to break free of, the addiction we all have at some level. It's a question of how bad is it, not do you have it to our phone. And I think, a compassion and gentleness. What's that lovely line from the guy that wrote Anam Cara? Be gentle with yourself. I think is in order because you're living in a world system that is designed to addict you to your phone. So in the same, in the same way that if there's a 18-year-old guy, let's say male, it could be a female, but let's say male, who's struggling with lust and sexual holiness and feels shame about it, And that's not all bad to feel the conviction of the Spirit of God, which is not shame, but is and to feel, sad over areas of brokenness. But you have to admit, you're living in a world like God designed your body to basically be married by 17 or 18 and be like out working in the
Right.
field and producing children early on to help you work in the field. And now we live in an era where not only does marriage happen technically, on average 10 or 20 years after God awakens your body sexually, but, pornography is a thumb swipe away on your phone.
Right.
So that doesn't
Right.
justify, sin or habitual habits of lust, but it means as you approach it, you have to recognize you're fighting a worldwide system of evil, and a conspiracy of factors. And I think with the phone, it's the same. Like to try to live a slower, unhurried, contemplative, peaceful, Jesus abiding life in the digital age. I mean, you are more than swimming upstream. You are attempting to live differently than 99% of the people around you, the systems of the world, the structures and institutions of our society, which goes to community. We're not designed, sin thrives in secrecy. So, there's that
Right.
saying in AA, we sin alone, but we heal together. And, or there's that other saying, we're only as sick as the secrets we keep. So
Yeah.
which is why the Christian pathway out of sin, addiction, compulsion is confession. It's naming your wickedness and your woundedness. And I talk a little bit about this in the book before not just God, but before loving community. And so there are no secrets. And we can't free ourselves of all sin based on a choice or willpower, but we can confess all of our
I know you
sin.
say that in the book, and I hate that because I would like to believe that I can willpower my life into the life that I want.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That'd be so rad if that
I
was
know.
true. That'd be
I
amazing.
convince myself that 4 days a week, that like I can just do what needs to be done to have the life that I want. And then I bizarrely get tied up in disappointment when I can't do it, John Mark.
Shocker.
But willpower,
How's that work?
you write about it, about like willpower just isn't the thing that we think it is.
Yeah. No, it works on very small
frustrating.
changes. Very small changes. But it's not helpful once you begin to touch on the deeper stuff in your shadow. You love the Enneagram. Once you start getting into all that Enneagram stuff in there, willpower is just not, it's not the solution. So, how I like to think about it, and I write a little bit about this in the book. So the New Testament, the writings of Scripture, the preaching of the Christian way give us this kind of vision, theological, spiritual, moral, relational vision of how life should and could be in the kingdom of God. And discipleship is a lifelong process of beginning to develop the capacity and the desire and the capacity, the ability and the willingness, which are two separate things, to, we often desire to do God's will long before we have the ability to do God's will. I desire to not worry about my future. I do not yet have the ability to not worry about my future, at least not at a consistent basis. So discipleship is a lifelong process of becoming the kinds of people who have the ability and the willingness to live this Christian vision of life in the kingdom of God. And it's a lifelong process. So that is all about change. It's all about how do you go from the people that we are to the people who are living the Sermon on the Mount over a lifetime. And when it comes to change, we approach change two ways, directly and indirectly. Direct change, or we could just say through the agency of willpower, is great. I use direct change whenever I possibly can, but it only works on small changes. So for example, if somebody right now begins their morning by checking Instagram rather than by, say, praying a psalm, you could listen to a sermon, you could go to church, you could listen to a podcast, you could be inspired in your heart, and you likely, unless if you're a full-on digital addict, which actually is a lot of the population, but if you're not, then
Right.
you probably can just decide based on your will, hey, I'm going to read a psalm. I'm going to pray a psalm every morning before I look at my phone. Great. And by the way, don't feel shame if you don't have that capacity. Many people don't right now because of digital addiction. But most of you, or many of you, can. But once you begin to touch on the deeper issues of discipleship, I mean, I'm at a spot in my discipleship where almost all of the brokenness in my life is so far beyond my ability to change through willpower or direct effort. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's my
Right.
emotional reactivity to my senior in high school when he does something that scares me, or it's disappointment I have over my marriage and the way it leaks out. And my wife is lovely, but the way it leaks out and contempt kind of digs, and like that, or anxiety I have over the future, or fear of what other people will think of me. All of these areas where I need to change in order to become the kind of person who is living in the kingdom of God with Jesus, who is more loving and joyful and peaceful. They are all beyond the range of my willpower. My problem is no longer that I don't know what the Bible teaches, and it is not that I don't desire to obey the commands of the Bible. It is that I do not have the capacity in my body to obey the commands of the Bible consistently.
Right.
And that's the life of
Right.
discipleship. How do you become the kind of person who can actually obey what Jesus commanded? And that's a lifelong process.
Yeah.
Those kinds of changes we approach indirectly. So let me give you a couple basic examples of indirect change. One would be the practices or the spiritual disciplines. So let's take anxiety. Jesus says, don't worry about tomorrow.
Right. Very direct, Lord.
Thank you, Jesus. That's I know what
Can
Jesus
do.
teaches. I want to obey Jesus' commands. I have like that other commands. It
Right.
takes you a while, like his commands around money, his commands around sexuality, divorce, often take you a while of following him to come to agree with him, to come to trust his moral vision. That one, I'm like, no, I'm there. I don't want to worry about tomorrow, Jesus. I would love
Yeah.
to be a person who is totally free of worry. My problem
Yeah.
is not a lack of biblical knowledge, and it's not a lack of desire. It's that the habits of sin in my body are so deep that I am so afraid so often of tomorrow. And so I can't just flip a switch and not worry about tomorrow this consistently. I can a little bit, there's certain things a thought might come in and be like, no, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to be in the moment. But consistently, overall, I'm not yet the kind of person that can live with no anxiety about the future. But you know what I can do is I can practice Sabbath. That is within the realm of my willpower. I can turn my phone off for 24 hours every weekend. I can begin my morning by praying the Psalms before I ever touch my phone. These kinds of changes are within the realm of my willpower. I can do them as a disciple of Jesus.
Wow.
And they're
Yeah.
indirect change, so one definition of the practices or the disciplines is they are disciplines by which I do what I can do, practice Sabbath, turn off my phone, read the Psalms, pray the Psalms, so that I can make space for God to transform me into the kind of person who can eventually do what I currently cannot do, not worry about my future or be
Right.
anxious at all. So I can't flip a switch and never worry again about my future, but I can practice Sabbath. I can pray the Psalms. I can do life in community and bear my fears with my close friends. I can do the work of therapy, and you just keep exposing deeper and deeper layers of my brokenness to Jesus to heal. And eventually, God, through all of that messy, lifelong relational process of discipleship, can transform me into the kind of person who's less anxious, maybe not pure freedom, but I think that there will be a day where I've already seen dramatic growth, where I will be profoundly calm and at peace before God. That will be my new baseline. And but it's a long, slow process.
It's a long, slow process. One of the things you wrote about, we have the Let's Read the Gospels podcast where I read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, for the whole year of 2023, and we're doing some more here in 24. But one of the things that I never paid attention to until you called it out, and now every time I read it, it stands out to me, is there were only two groups, crowds or apprentices.
Yes.
I mean, there were Sadducees and Pharisees, so there's a different, but of people who were following Jesus, you were either in the crowd or you were up close apprenticing. And as I'm reading and listening, as I'm even hearing you now, the indirect and the growth, is it fair to say that there are areas of my life where I'm a up close apprentice and there's areas where I might be in the crowd, or are you all one or the other?
Well, the nice thing about apprenticeship is it's more about your level of devotion than your level of maturity. And that is
that's good to hear.
so encouraging to my heart. I mean,
That's so
read about
encouraging,
Jesus,
Jamar.
not just Jesus' disciples. Read it, like people get confused between the apostles and the disciples. So people think Jesus had 12 disciples.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus had hundreds of disciples. He had at least 120.
Yes.
You know, he had 70 that he sent out. He had female disciples, which we literally have no record, not a one of any rabbi in the ancient world. All rabbis had disciples. We have no record of any rabbi ever with a female disciple before Jesus or after Jesus. I mean, he was the rabbi with female disciples. So Jesus had all these disciples, and then he had this subgroup of 12 apostles that were this highly symbolic group that blah, blah, blah. We digress. But talk about not just his disciples, but his inner 12. They were a freaking disaster. I mean, they were not.
Right.
But they had left everything to follow him. I mean, one of them full on went back and betrayed Jesus. Others denied Jesus, abandoned Jesus, were arguing about who's the greatest. We're so obtuse that the second member of the Trinity had to say to them at one point, "Are you so dull?" Like they were so thick-headed and willfully ignorant, you know? And I love that. So the marker of a disciple is not, are you like crazy, sagacious, calm, spiritual saint. It's are you willing to really follow Jesus? It's a measure of commitment, of devotion, of are you willing to give up everything and to follow after him in your stumbling, broken, wounded, I'm still a mess way.
Wow.
And
Yeah, so crowd versus apprentice has nothing to do with your ability. It has to do with
It's
your
not a
desire.
moral
If you want to be an
category.
apprentice, you're up close.
Yeah,
That's
because the
it.
crowd had some people
Great.
that were really
Great.
good moral people that were Torah observant Jews. It had other people that were like murderers that were scheming
Yeah.
to kill Jesus. Other people that were just new, were still considering
Yeah.
who is this Jesus. But it had, the point I'm making in the book is in America, we have three categories. We have the crowds, disciples, and then we have Christians. This like middle
Right.
category, people that like basically agree with the Jesus kind of sort of Christian worldview with some glaring exceptions, and maybe even go to church, maybe even on a regular basis, but are not, their life is not organized around learning to obey everything that Jesus commanded. It's organized around work or pleasure or materialism or fame or success or going fishing on the weekend.
Right.
And and that category does not exist in the Gospels. And I argue it's a literary device. They don't want it, not because they're not aware that there are people like that, not because there weren't people like that in Jesus' day, but they want to force you, the reader. They want to put this binary on you that we hate, and they want to give it no nuance because they want you to ask yourself the hard question. Am I an apprentice of Jesus, or am I just a face in the crowd? And a face in the crowd doesn't mean you're a bad person. Doesn't mean you don't believe in Jesus. It doesn't mean you don't agree with Christianity. Doesn't mean it just means your life is organized around something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
That sounds fun.
And now back to finish up our conversation with John Mark.
That sounds fun.
Okay, I have a gospel-centric question that it is okay if you don't have an answer. I just would like to know what you think. In Matthew, I read it yesterday for Let's Read the Gospels, and every time it brings a question to my mind. In Matthew, Jesus says, "You will sit on 12 thrones around me," right? Do you know where I'm talking
judging
about?
the 12 tribes of Israel.
So does that include Judas?
Ooh. Yeah, that's it. You know what I do in hard situations like this? I text Tim Mackey.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I'm going to ask him. He's coming back on the show in the spring. So I am going to ask him. I asked him if Mark was the naked guy at the end of Mark. That was my big question for Tim Mackey.
Don't ask him that because it's theoretically my namesake. There's no John Mark in the Bible, but people think there is. It's a confusion thing. And theoretically, it was the naked guy. If it's so.
That's right.
I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, that's interesting though, right? That Jesus, knowing where it would go, said, you're the 12 that will sit in the 12 thrones and judge the 12 tribes.
And they have a sense that there needs to be a 12th apostle to replace. But it's ambiguous in the text because before the coming of the Holy Spirit, they draw straws. It's unclear if God was involved in that or not. It's a really interesting story. I haven't quite been able to make. I mean, I know this. I know that without getting into all the emotionally loaded stuff, it's interesting that Jesus had female disciples, but not female apostles. And that's an interesting question. And there are different theories about that because he was so radical at breaking down kind of gender barriers. And so there are different theories from different people I really look up to and respect. I don't have any dogmatic view on that. But certainly I think what most people agree on is that the reason Jesus chose 12 apostles and possibly the reason he chose 12 men was it was this like symbolic prophetic act that he was kind of restarting a new Israel, which was founded by 12 brothers, which became the name, literal name for 12 tribes. So Jesus is saying that my followers, who eventually are made up of Jews and Gentiles, a major theme in the New Testament, we think of it as no big deal. It was earth-shattering at the time. This is a new Israel. I'm forming a new family, a new humanity. I'm fulfilling the promise I made to Abraham so many centuries before. I will bless you, and you will be a blessing, and through you all nations on earth will be blessed. And this movement is now going outside the boundaries of ethnic Jews to the whole world. And it's starting with this small community of apprentices of Jesus. So certainly, whatever else is happening, that's happening. And the 12 tribes judging the... I think that's what Jesus is saying, is my promise to Abraham is coming true.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. That's very good. Isn't that fascinating,
That's
though?
amazing.
That's
my way of
stuff like that
like
is what
giving you a different answer. You didn't ask that question, and because I don't know the answer.
So good.
What is Jesus?
Yeah, I don't
know.
But the beauty of Scripture is those questions never stop coming the longer we're in.
And that's where Tim Mackey's whole
that's
thing
the fun
is
of
so
it.
awesome. On the Bible's full of puzzles, and they're there on purpose.
Yeah.
And the Psalm 1 kind of way of meditation on Scripture. It's he calls it Jewish meditation literature. You're designed. I've just followed Jesus long enough. But even some of the ones that are troubling to me, that one's not troubling. Other parts of the Bible are troubling. And I just trust that I don't understand it yet. And that if I just sit with the puzzle, they're not all going to get solved by the end, by the time I die. But they will, you know what I mean? You just have that beautiful moment where you've read a story in the Bible for forever and you're just totally confused by it. And then you randomly hear some podcast or hear some sermon and you're like, oh, that's what it means. I've always wondered about that. And it's always been weird to me. And then somebody just says something, you're like, oh, now it makes perfect sense. That makes sense. I've had so many of those moments. You learn to just hold in gentle tension the parts of the Bible that you still have questions about.
And when there stops being questions about Scripture and I get bored, if I get bored on anything, you know me, if I get bored on something, I'm out. And so curiosity is one of the greatest gifts God's ever given me. I love being curious. And so the Bible keeps being fun to me because I can't stop being curious about what we run into.
I wonder if that's part of why God made, God inspired the writers of the Library of Scripture to have so many obtuse moments in there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just to keep it
interesting.
Okay, so finish with this for us. It's the first, it's the second full real week of January. Okay. And people are making their new rhythms for the year.
Love it.
So tell us why. Just give us a pitch for apprenticing with Jesus. Why is this the year? If someone is new to this and they're listening because they heard this was a Christian podcast and they're new to this whole thing, or they're ready to re-enter into a faith life at all, what is the why behind apprenticing Jesus in 2024?
I love the new year just based on my personality type.
Yeah.
There's nothing different between January 1st and December 31st, but there's some psychological line in the sand where you're like, all right. It's like the feeling you get at the beginning of a new day. It's like, okay, it's a new day.
Yeah.
I love that sense of blank canvas, whether it's a complete myth and illusion or not. I love that sense.
Yeah, right.
I think you can't think about apprenticeship to Jesus the way you think about like getting in shape or going on a diet or finally quitting your job and starting that new business as this thing you need to go do. And is this year the thing I'm going to do? I'm going to start running 4 days a week and do yoga 1 day a week and eat all paleo and pray every day and follow Jesus.
Right.
It's not, take it out of that category. Put it in the life category. And, I open the book with the question, who are you following? And I just try to argue that everybody is following somebody or something. In Christian language, everyone is a disciple. The question is not, are you a disciple? It's who or what are you a disciple of? And what I mean by that is right now you're already following something or somebody. You're already apprenticing. You're already on a journey. You're already going somewhere with your life. You're already moving through the universe. You're already getting up in the morning and putting on some clothes and going out to do something with your life. You're already looking to something or someone to make you happy and give you peace. It could be, all right, when I lose 20 pounds or when my podcast gets to this or when my new business is this or when I retire, when my kids graduate or when so-and-so likes me or when I get married or when I make this much money or when I graduate from college. It could be anything. Or when I, climb El Capitan. It could be or when I travel to Honduras. It could be anything. But you're already pursuing something or someone, looking for something or someone to make you happy and at peace, and or whatever language you put around it. And so the call to apprentice under Jesus is in that category, not in the New Year's resolutions category. And I'm not against New Year's resolutions and have better habits and start your day by praying the Psalms, not by
just a different category.
But this is a much deeper question. It's about really, who are you trusting? Who or what do you believe will lead you to the life you most deeply desire? When Jesus said, come and follow me, he wasn't asking you to do something you're not already doing. You're already following, you're already walking, you're already living a life. He was asking or calling you to trust him to shepherd you, lead you, guide you to the life that at some level we all most deeply desire, which we who follow Jesus have come to believe is found in following Jesus into the inner life of love that we call the Trinity, and doing life with other followers of Jesus, sharing his love between us. And Jesus called that, or the writer John, the Apostle John, called that the life that is truly life. And many people are living, if you're listening to this, you're alive, but are you living, Yeah.
That's it, John Mark. That's right. Well, I'm so grateful for this book. It feels the long, slow process.
Sorry about that.
Of faith and writing.
It wasn't my decision, just to clarify.
Well, no,
it was my decision to write about it, but
I know. You're just the one who keeps saying it to me over and over for the last, I don't know, you came on the show in March of 2017, John Mark Homer. So for the last 7 years,
there it is.
You've been telling me to slow down. And but the thing about the book is it really lays out how to write a rule of life.
Yes.
And based on these practices, and I think,
which is a little bit more in the New Year's resolutions category, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Totally. But I mean, the thing is, it is the indirect thing you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Is the indirect way is to write the rule of life, because the direct way I can't do on my own.
Exactly.
But so I'm grateful for the long, slow process that also I don't have to have the rule of life by January 31st of 2024. Yeah. I can spend the whole year writing what I want my life to be. Right. And that is being shaped as I'm working on it.
And
So
cool factor
that is
there,
my goal, is to spend the year doing
we
it.
built a little, I'm not a big tech guy, but we built a cool piece of tech on our website that's free. There's a link to it in the back of the book, or you can go to practicingtheway.org. That's called a Rule of Life Builder. That's really cool. It walks you through kind of a digital process to construct a rule of life, and then it's editable and it's shareable, and it'll print it out in a PDF for you. It's pretty cool.
I love it.
So that's there if anybody.
That's great. Thank
curious.
you for that.
It's free and for anybody.
Yeah, thank you. Well, glad to have you on, my friend. Thanks for making time
Annie
for
F.
us.
Downs, I love chatting to you. Thank you for having me on. Happy New
Thanks.
Year,
It's
and may
mutual.
the peace of Christ be with you.
Oh, you guys, isn't he just the best? We are so lucky that John Mark always makes time, energy, space, thoughts for us. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for him. Few pastors have shaped my life the way John Mark and his work have shaped my life. And that seems true for a bunch of y'all as well from what you say to us. So make sure you get a copy of Practicing the Way. And if you aren't already, go follow him on social media. Tell him thanks again for being on the show. And thanks for being a Hall of Funner. If you have any questions from this episode, you can drop them in the Q&A box on your Spotify app. Or if you want to, you can just DM them to us on Instagram at That Sounds Fun Podcast. We will answer them for you over there. If you need anything else from me, you know I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Annie F. Downs on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, on a plane on my way back to Nashville. Anywhere you may need me, that is how you can find me. And I think that's it for me today, friends. Go out or stay home. Do something that sounds fun to you, and I will do the same. Today, what sounds fun to me is getting home and time to see a friend play some music tonight. So I'm just going to hustle and bustle, hurry home to get there. So I'm excited to be back. Y'all have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday with a really important conversation as we are entering an election year with our friend, Michael Ware. We'll see y'all then.
That sounds fun. That sounds fun.